Hi, Edgar. I am Sabrina Ramirez with Geeks of Color, and it's a pleasure to meet you to talk about your film Last Night in Soho.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Of course, this film is reminiscent of 60s psychological horror and very unique to your filmography. What was the conception of the story like?
I think there are a number of things. I mean, in terms of the genre element, I guess it was just a feeling that I got from older films, which I didn't feel like I got the same kind of, quite the same thrill from modern day films. So there was something kind of that inspired me in terms of the British kind of psychological horror films of the day, and also British directors like Alfred Hitchcock and Michael Powell. But then beyond that, I think sort of it was also, there's two other big inspirations. Is one, just like being obsessed with the 60s, the decade before I was born, partly through my parents' record collection, and maybe the sense that I had missed out on the cool decade. But then like the more you would like think about that and obsess about like going back in time to be in the 60s, I start to wonder whether that was a problem in itself. And was I in retreat by daydreaming about a previous decade? And was nostalgia itself like a failure to deal with the present day? And then the other big part of it is just being in London. Like, so I've lived in London for 27 years and I've spent more time in Soho than any couch in any apartment that I've ever lived in. And it is, through the years, has always been a place that's both exciting and compelling and sometimes disturbing. But you know, it's also the center of the film and TV industry. So many of us like work and see it every day. And it was something where I wanted to write something about the area and the ghosts of the past.
Definitely. And I feel like I love that you mentioned about nostalgia. I think we're all kind of guilty of kind of romanticizing something while blissfully ignoring the full reality of it all. And that's definitely an important idea in this film, along with many other kind of heavy themes. But if there's something you want people to take away from this film, what would it be?
Uh, um, if there's a moral to the story, it's something that I try and tell myself, is that there's nothing that you can do to change the past. All you can do is deal with things moving forward. And I think sort of there's a tendency, whether it's time traveling to the 60s or just thinking about, oh, if I could go back and if I could change that, or I didn't say that, or I didn't do that, that's something that I kind of find myself plagued by, that kind of like that idea. And it's like, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. To me, that's where the nightmare of the film kicks in, is that Eloise goes back to the 60s, but not in a time machine. She's sort of like living somebody else's life in the past. But that doesn't mean that she can do anything to avert disaster. And that's where sort of like the dream of being sort of like a time traveler turns into a nightmare, because she's powerless to change future events as much as she wants to. So these things prey on my mind a lot, but I guess the it seems like stating the obvious, but many people need to be reminded, is there's nothing you can do to change the past. You can only do better moving forward.
And speaking of those dream sequences, you had practical effects with the camera work and choreography, and that was absolutely stunning. I kind of want to talk about a little bit of that process, how you came up with the choreography.
Well, a lot of it in terms of those sequences where you're doing these kind of complicated, like extended shots and lots of practical effects in camera, it's all about like being able to experience the dream as Eloise does. So maybe if you as an audience member are watching it saying, how are they doing this? It would be like Eloise seeing it and saying, what is happening? So it's really about like the sort of conception of a lot of those sequences all feeding into the idea of not breaking the spell. The more that you can do things in camera, whether it's like a sort of a switch between performers or like a mirror shot that's essentially done in reality, like in camera, it's all about kind of just maintaining, you know, sort of like not breaking the sort of sense of, you know, it's about sort of maintaining a sense of disbelief, you know?
Definitely. And it was brilliant. Thank you so much for talking with me today. It was great to meet you.
Thank you very much.